I felt like it was important to say something here and to show, I've got two daughters, and if I can't show them that there's no opportunity or no job or anything that is more important than your sovereignty over your own body and doing what you know is right for you, then I'm kind of failing as a father.
Pete Parada, welcome to the Dr. Tina Show. So excited to have you here today. I want you to introduce yourself to my audience so they know what we're dealing with here, because I have been looking forward to this episode for a really long time.
Oh, sure. Yeah, my name's Pete Parada. I'm a musician, drummer, mostly known from like the rock or punk rock world with bands like Face to Face and Saves the Day. And I've done tours with groups like Devo and My Chemical Romance and recorded with Rob Halford from Judas Priest. But I think most people probably, if they know me at all, which is a small group, but they would know from a stint I did 14 years drumming for the band The Offspring. And I think that's kind of where, if my name has popped up, it's probably heard it from there.
Yeah. And you have come onto the radar recently for what I believe to be a true hero. You stood up against the machine and you declined the vaccination for your own personal reasons. And it has just been really taken to the extreme. And I was hoping you would share your story with us today.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it all kind of came to a head in summer of 2021 in June. The industry was starting to lean on everyone. You get the phone calls from management or tour managers going, "Hey, everyone's got to turn in your vax card. We got to set this up for travel or for venues or this and that." And so I knew that it was kind of going to come to a head for me. And I got a really, really terrible, awful phone call from the band's manager, who was newer and, didn't know me at all. And I didn't really know him. And it was just really, really abusive and aggressive and angry and just very belittling and shaming and, coercive and leaning on me. Like, basically was made clear to me that I was either to get the vaccine or I would be out. And those were my two choices. And, so I'd been there for 14 years at this point, and, up until pretty much that day, everything was great. Everything was fine. I never had any troubles with anyone. I never missed a day of work, never missed a photo shoot, a video shoot, a show, no matter how sick I was or what was going on for my family or whatever. I was there every day. So, the only reason I'm not still there is this issue. And, I tried to talk to the band about it. They backed up the manager. And so I was in a spot, and within a week of, the back and forth, all communication was cut off. And then I found out that I was replaced from my Southwest Airlines app, when my flight to rehearsal disappeared. And then my access to the work calendar from the band was revoked, and I couldn't log in or see what was going on. So it was like, that was the message sent to me, which was, see you later. And that was that. So I kind of sat with it for a month in shock of, these were people that I had known for a decade and a half. Like, I spent more time with them sometimes than my family in a given year. And our families were close. Like, our kids grew up together. Our wives were all really close. And overnight, it was like my whole family was just erased, just gone. And so for me, there was a lot of confusion there, and a lot of, you're feeling every emotion. There's like, my God, is my career over? There's a career death. And then if I'm not a drummer in this band, then who am I now? There's identity death. And, so we're just trying to figure out, well, how do we as a family, how do I as a person even navigate this? And so we just kind of sat with it for a few weeks and tried to take it in. And then I started getting phone calls from people because they had a tour coming up. And, so now I'm getting hit up by friends for tickets to these shows that I know I'm not going to be at. And I'm like, oh my God, do I have to have this conversation 500 different times? So we crafted a statement to put out to just, number one, let people know that I wouldn't be there anymore. Like, I'm not going to be at these shows. I can't get you tickets, and number two, all of a sudden I needed work. So I needed to let people know, like, where, the industry was in a terrible spot already. So, but I'm still like, well, I still have to put myself out there. Like, this is my one skill set and I'm the breadwinner of my family. And all of a sudden I'm overnight completely unemployed. Like, I've got to find work. But the third reason, which I think, was the most important, was somebody had to say something about what was going on. Like, I talked to a lot of people going through this process, who, some people went and got a fake card. Some people felt super coerced. They're like, well, I got to get back to work. And some people were just like me and said, no, I can't, I'm not going to get it. And they're out. And, so a lot of this was happening everywhere. It wasn't just me. I wasn't an isolated incident. But so it felt like, well, if everyone's going to be quiet about this and just kind of slink away and hope that when it all blows over, then nothing will have gotten on them and they can get back to work. I felt like it was important to say something here and to show, I've got two daughters, and if I can't show them that there's no opportunity or no job or anything that is more important than your sovereignty over your own body and doing what you know is right for you, then I'm kind of failing as a father. And for me, that was the biggest piece of it, was if I can't teach my kids how to stand up here, then what are they going to do later on in life if they come to the same situation? And if I don't stand up here, if more people don't stand up here, how many more rights, how many more choices are they not even going to have? Because we're all just giving them up without thinking, because we've been locked down for a year and a half and we've been terrified and bombarded daily. Like, you're locked in your house and everyone's got the news on and it's a ticker on the side of the screen. Oh, all the cases. Oh my God, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. And, so I understood that there was a lot of fear going on, but it just felt like, we had all these rights swept away. And then here comes the dangling carrot of, oh, you can have them all back. Oh, you just got to do this thing. And I just knew that it wasn't going to stop. It was going to keep coming and coming and coming. And so for me, I just was kind of fighting for the world that I wanted my kids to be able to have the same choices that I had and that we all should have. So I guess that's a really long-winded answer to you. But
oh, you made me tear up. I can feel your heart. I can feel your heart coming through in this. It's infuriating. That's what gets me is I refused to have my daughter watch me fold. I refused. Yeah. I will die on this hill, and I will not give that up. And when I see others doing it, it really invokes, I just see a lot of bravery coming out of you. And I tear up over the anger that I feel over what's happened to people unnecessarily.
Well, exactly, unnecessarily. And that people like you and people like me had to stand up and push back on this. And the problem with the music industry was there started to be this air of inevitability of like, well, you're going to have to get it. There's no way around it. Everyone's going to have to do this. And, even my wife and I got into it with some people in the industry of like, no, well, this isn't, it's contraindicated for me. Like I'm not going to get this for me. And people going, well, what, are you just going to walk away from, being a rock star or, walk away from your whole job over this? And it's just like, yeah. And, and even since taking the stand that I did, like, there's some people that are still kind of scratching their heads going, I get it, yeah, your daughter isn't standing up and whatever, but you're a pretty tiny speck here. Like, did you really make a difference? And I'm like kind of looking at them like, well, that's not the point. Like, did I make a huge worldwide difference? No, absolutely not. That's silly. But did I make a difference to the two people where it mattered most? Yeah, I did. And so for me, that's mission accomplished. And everything on top of that is ego or stuff was never on my plate to begin with.
I think you have made a big difference though, because off the air I mentioned, and this isn't, you had said you don't look at it, but I Googled you, and for anyone to put your name into Google, it's just a barrage, right? The media really came at you to make an example. And something that happens to me, and I don't know if I'm sure it happens to you too. When I'm walking out there, I think I'm talking, I live in the country, and I talk to this big field all day through my microphone, and I don't know if I'm making much of a difference, and Instagram won't let me grow. And I can't, I feel like I'm talking into an echo chamber. But when I go out almost every time I'm out in public somewhere, somebody comes up to me and recognizes me and says, thank you. Thank you for holding the line. And so I just want to say to you that their strategy of using you as the example all over the Google page, it's showing bravery, right? Bravery has to be modeled, and it's contagious, and courage is contagious. And so whenever I mention on my socials or anywhere and I do polls and I say, hey guys, let's make a list of all the rock stars that that held the line. Like, let's make a list of them and let's figure out who didn't so we can boycott those shows. And your name always comes up. Like, you're a hero to so many people. And so just know that you're holding the line has given people the opportunity to mirror their bravery back, right? And that it does matter.
That's really sweet. And I still, I mean, for a year and a half now, we've gotten messages over and over and over on Instagram, through my website, people going, oh my God, thank you for saying something. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one. And I thought I was the only one too. Like when I put that statement out, I was expecting nothing but flamethrowers. Like I was like lighting my career on fire. I wrote to my friend, I said, all right, bracing for impact. And it was the complete opposite. There was just this wave of support that showed up. And all these people going, oh my God, nobody had ever put it that way before. Or I showed your statement to my family who doesn't understand my stance here, doesn't understand my position here. And so that kind of thing, you know, things that I wouldn't identify as, but labeling me however they want. And, everybody came out of the woodwork that first week. Like we got hit up by all the anchors at Fox News, all the anchors at MSNBC, CNN morning show producer, like hounded me and my wife nonstop. And it felt like vultures. And I wasn't in any place to talk then. Like, I mean, I'm talking now a year and a half later for the first time, like, just like I wanted to give myself time to accept what happened and take it in and kind of, have some perspective on what this meant for me, for my family, and just get back to like, all right, well, what do I do? Rebuilding my life. I want to be creative. So where do I start? And so to me, it was like, well, I don't want to talk to anybody and that has an agenda that's going to try to twist my words or try to make me look like the poster child for a complete moron or whatever their agenda is. Or, it was just like, I'm just going to say no to everything. And I'm just going to get to a place where I'm creating and where I feel good about what I'm doing again and find a way, like, how does my family move forward from this? How do we, regroup and rebuild my career in a way where I can start providing for my family again? And so to me, that was more important than any kind of weird attention or anything that came out of it. Cause I didn't expect that. Like it was just, like I said, threefold: letting people know I'm not going to be there anymore, but also this isn't right, and regardless of, my medical stance on it, to me, like, no is a complete sentence. If you do not want to take this, you do not have to take this. And the backtracking that's happening now, a year and a half after my story, where everyone from the top on down is like, oh, well, we never forced it on anybody, or oh, we never mandated anything. I didn't shut anything down. And it's just like, the internet's right there. Like your tweets are still up. It's mind boggling that they think that they can just gaslight their way out of this. And maybe they can. I mean, there's not a big history of people in power being held accountable, but I'm hopeful that if nothing else, enough people, because at first I got a lot of support from people who are like, yeah, I'm not taking it either. And now I get a lot of messages from people that are like, I wish I hadn't. And
Yeah.
I don't feel about it. And I don't feel good about the way that I felt pressured into it. And it was, from everything from your job or your livelihood, but a lot of it was social pressure. A lot of it was people that were like, I was tired of my friends looking at me sideways, or I wanted, my mom to talk to me again, or, and it's just like, why was anybody ever put in this position to lose family and friends and work and stuff over this thing that nobody understood? And we're rolling out this new novel product that nobody really knows what it's going to do, if it's going to help. I mean, even from the beginning, my wife still has a screenshot of this. You see, well, from January 2021. We did not test for transmission. We're hopeful, or I'm paraphrasing what it says, but I put that up a couple months ago, like, hey, this, they put it right out on Front Street, like for people to say, well, we didn't know, or we didn't have the data. They said right there, they didn't test for it. And I had people online saying that's a fake screenshot. It's just,
Yeah. Oh
who's
yeah.
got time in their day to make a fake screenshot? Like, so it's just been a crazy ride. And I feel like more people are at least waking up to like, okay, yeah, that was weird. That got out of hand. But for me, I would like there to be more that got out of hand. And I don't feel good about how I behaved in that. I was really nasty to people. I cut people out of my life. I said horrible things about people online, but it seems more that people are like, well, we all said things we regret. Let's move on. And I'm like, well, I don't regret what I said. Like, I still stand by my position. And, so I think there needs to be some kind of accountability here, or it's just going to happen again.
They create the monster they're trying to kill. And
Mhm.
the more they push, the rowdier I got. I was like, you are all sparring with the wrong girl here. And so for me, I came out the gates really early. Like from day one, I'm like, something smells off. And I took a barrage of hell from day one. So by
I'll
2020,
bet.
yeah, it was crazy. And by 2021, I was tired. And by 2022, I was really tired. And now I just sit back and I've got the receipts. It's all on, I have all the videos of all the people saying the terrible things. I have a picture on my computer screen of a masked person holding a sign up at a rally that says gas the unvaxxed. And I look at it every single day, not to be vindictive,
Yeah.
but so I do not forget how we were treated for asking questions, for even questioning anything. I have a series of autoimmune conditions. And so whatever the reasons be, whatever people choose is what they choose. And we were not allowed to. And like you said, people were terrorized. I do have a beef though, with the folks. I mean, it's so bad that these folks are coming back. You mentioned they're trying to gaslight. That's like a whole thing that can really get me going. I have to keep my temper cool, my cortisol low, but it's the folks who did it out of convenience because they just didn't want any pushback. They wanted to travel, or they wanted to, have the easy life. Like those are the people that I feel were almost more responsible.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I try to have I understand where you're coming from, and I get that 100%. And I try to understand that everybody was scared. And I don't like to say, anybody was uninformed, because people sure love to tell me that I'm uninformed on a daily basis. But people were scared, and they just listened to whatever they were told. They took the mainstream thing. I was told my views were extreme and I needed to talk to more mainstream people and listen to more mainstream ideas. And I'm just like, well, I'm sitting here later and everything that I said has come to pass. So I, I don't know where listening to the mainstream would have gotten anybody, but I try to hold compassion that fear is a really, really powerful thing. I mean, it's been used historically all over the place to motivate and put your thumb on the scale and eat out of them. Was scared, especially in my industry. I mean, especially if you're not the leader of the band or an original member or something, like you don't have any power there. If you're a crew member, if you're a hired gun musician, if you work for, if your choice is do this to keep your job, or you're out and your family's out, like, so I try not to begrudge anybody that made a different decision than me, because I'm not in their head, I'm not in their family, and everyone's got to do what they think is right for them. But I understand your anger, and I love your fight, and I believe that there should be accountability here, like there really should. And I'm hopeful that we'll see some, but I can't, I can't live for it, because it hurts my heart too much, and I just want to keep working and creating and being present with my family. But I'm watching, I'm paying attention, I'm trying to push for it. And I would love to see someone who was in power to come back, or just even a general person to come back in my life and go, hey, I was really lousy to you. I totally dipped out of your life and disappeared. And, and we've had people that left on our family, a ton of them. We lost so many people. And we've had some people that have kind of shuffled back around, will start liking posts again, whatever, that disappeared for a year and a half. We had people that unfollowed us immediately. Like, you know, like, I'm not interested in just acting like nothing ever happened, because the way that I was treated and the way that my family was treated and the way that people like you were treated, like, there needs to be an accountability for that before there's any kind of, I'm all for forgiveness, but there's got to be some atonement first. It's
Yeah.
not just let's just move on, because it was too much. I mean, we're still, I'm still working to get back what was lost, for me,
Mhm.
career wise and otherwise. It's a daily fight. And so, no, I can't just go. So if you can't, put you and at least say, hey, I was wrong. The way that that went down was wrong. I'm sorry that I disappeared on you and your family at the lowest point of your goddamn life. You know,
Yeah, that's huge. Oh, you froze again. Hold on, I'm going to wait for it. There you are.
or
Your internet wants to be persnickety today.
I know, it's like somebody heard, oh, he's talking again. I'll
Oh,
throttle the end.
I actually think that's a thing. I had a couple instances throughout the last few years where I would be sharing with somebody what I really knew, and all of a sudden somebody, it would be so odd. Like all of a sudden a stewardess or somebody would come up to me and be like, "What are you talking about? What are you doing here?" It was like the dark
That's
forces were,
bizarre.
it was super bizarre. And I was like, is this? And it happened so many times. And my husband witnessed it. And he was like, "You're not kidding. Like, it's like the minions are, I don't know. It's been a trip." I don't think people realize for you as well. I mean, let's backpedal here a second. For the music industry to get shut down like that for so many years, and for all of you in the industry to be out of work completely, was so devastating, I'm sure, financially. And then to be like just on the cusp of coming back and then to be shut off again like that. I mean, that what you did was monumental. And I don't think people appreciate the front story of that. Oh, you froze
Sorry, I'm
again.
waiting. Yeah, I'm waiting for your. Normally, it's catching up, and I can get the gist of what you're asking. But I think I understand what you're saying. But yeah, everybody was out of work for a year and a half, and so, like I said, I understand the need to get back to work. I needed to get back to work. I don't make royalties. I don't have songs on the radio that still show up with a check in my inbox. I'm a working touring musician. And so for me and my family, yeah, we needed to get back to work. And it's it, so I understand the crew people, everyone had to get back to work. And it just seemed that it was like, well, here's your carrot. Here, you can get back to work if you do this. We can all get back to work. I wasn't trying to keep anybody from working. My point was I should be able to work too. But even if you have a medical exemption in this industry or anywhere, it sounds like, because people have written to me all over the world saying, yeah, I had, my doctor wrote me an exemption, didn't matter, still got fired. And that's what I was trying to point out, because people like to say, well, we've all got to do the right thing here, and we've all got to get this to protect the vulnerable who can't get it. And you're like, oh, well, I'm one of the vulnerable. It's like, nope, you get it too. You don't count. It's that's not the same thing. And it's just kind of like, all right, well, then what are you doing here? Because you're performing this goodness of, oh, we're so benevolent. Look how great we care about our fans. They tested positive. They weren't put up in a hotel. They were put on an airplane and sent home the next day, tested positive. Abundance of caution of the tour. We're all such great people, putting people on airplanes sick. Like, it wasn't about protecting people. It wasn't about anybody's health. It was about getting the money rolling again and protecting profits. And it was disgusting to watch, because all I can do is sit there going, I'm not even allowed to work. And these people are out here pretending that they're benevolent soldiers of good health. And instead they're just sending people home. I get a message about this giant tour going out, and somebody on the tour sent me their backstage protocol, which was preposterous. It was like 4 bands on the bill. Each band is its own bubble. You will not interact with any of the other bands. Inside your bubble, the band will only interact with the band. If you're on stage right crew, you only interact with those people. You will move through the backstage area, through the temperature checks together. Like, so now you're on this giant tour with hundreds of people, and you're allowed to interact with 4 of them. and you're getting tested and temperature checked all day long. And I was like, that doesn't sound like tour. That sounds like prison. Like
Yeah.
that sounds awful. And it's hard enough to be on tour as it is. I think a lot of people look at bands and people that are touring the world. Sometimes of the time it is you are just getting through the downtime of the day to get back to when you're going to be on stage for an hour or two. And you can go from playing in front of 100,000 people at a gigantic festival to less than 2 hours later, you're still wound up, but it's like the juxtaposition sea of people that I can't see of, I'm all by myself. What am I doing here? Why am I doing this? And there's a loneliness to it that I think people don't take into account. And that's where, the stereotypes of rock and roll and drugs and alcohol and stuff comes in. People aren't turning to drugs and alcohol because it's a party and they're having a great time. They're trying to survive. They're trying to keep their sanity. They're trying to find any way to get through whatever's happening to them. And, everybody thinks, oh, big, rich and famous people are just the happiest. And I've known plenty of rich and famous people, and I wouldn't describe very many of them as particularly happy. Like it's a different life and a different lifestyle that I think is hard to understand unless you've been around it or, in the general vicinity of it. It's I guess all that to say, it's very, very hard to be on tour and to limit your interactions down to a handful of people, was just sounded ridiculous to me. Another tour, they asked an entire crew bus to sleep in 95 masks, which I thought was absolute insanity. And thankfully, all of the crew decided amongst themselves, like, let's take a vote here. Are we going to do this? And they all said, no, we're not going to do it. Kept it within the bus, but they're like, we're not doing this. We're not caving to this. So countless stories, bands hitting me up a month after I'm let go, going, hey, we're on a festival with your band. Why are you not here? This is stupid. No one cares. No one's asking for cards. No, it doesn't matter. And so, that's frustrating to have tried to have those conversations and be told, no, there's absolutely no way. And then get these messages from people who are like, we're out here. We're right next door to your old band. We're not vaccinated. Like, no one cares. This is silly.
That's
And so,
insane.
yeah,
That's shocking and insane. And it infuriating.
right. And that's so then it's like, cool. Now there's a new wave of depression I haven't felt yet.
Man, I know you really you became the poster child for something. I think also too, you were in a punk rock band, and when did the punks, I told everyone that likes punk rock music that I was interviewing you, they all got fired up and they were like, ask him what the fuck happened to the punks. when did it become punk rock to, go with the herd? And just a lot of frustration at the music scene in general for folding like that.
Yeah, and I think everybody was just like, oh, what's the big deal? This is all we got to do to get back to work. Everyone should just take it. And it's like, it's not a one size fits all situation. And there's personal choice here. There's, this thing is brand new, untested technology. Like, we don't have, there's nobody in these trials that has any kind of health issues. It's the healthiest of the healthiest, and then cherry picked from there all the way down. Like, we're going to put out data with relative risk reduction, which is absolutely meaningless. And it didn't make any sense. It was like, what is this push for? I'm uncomfortable, just because I can't even ask a question here. You're cutting real people out of your life. Like, the division was so heavy. And I feel like we're still, if you live online, you think it's an unscalable mountain of division. But when people, from my experience, when I get out in the world and actually have conversations with people, then there's so much more common ground there.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like there's this big push on the internet to make us all feel like there's no way to come together. And the last thing that anybody in charge wants is us realizing we've got more in common, that we don't need to keep fighting about this while above our heads there's decisions being made that we don't even know about that are no good for us, but we're busy fighting about stuff that ultimately we don't have any control over and really doesn't matter. And I'm just hoping that, for humanity's sake, we can all understand that and take a breath and stop fighting about dumb stuff and realize, like, hey, let's come together here. Let's find some common ground. Let's build a bridge instead of burning them. and find a way back to each other so we can, rebuild. Like the last few years, yeah, it's been terrible for everyone around the world, and it was shocking. And I think we're still all have whiplash from it. Everybody was talking, oh, this is the new talking points. This is what we're pushing now, and that'll work. And now we need to lean on these people. Should we tolerate these people? Our patience is wearing thin. It was an incredibly horrifying thing to live through, especially if you were the one it was aimed at. I think for
Yeah,
people that went along, they can go, well, I'm not, I don't know about all that, but I'm not getting involved. And it's like, yeah, but it's hitting someone you care about.
for sure.
Hopefully people will look and go, oh, well, I'm going to hold on here a second. He's a rational person. I've known him a long time. What is he saying here? Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm kind of being nasty and I don't understand the situation. I don't understand that not everybody can do this or not everybody wants to. And it can't be a one size fits all situation.
Yeah. You'd think that our past experiences with people would have influenced how they received the information coming out of our mouths. There were a lot of people who really held me in high regard as a physician, as an intelligent person, as someone who made good decisions. And then suddenly they turned so quickly. And I was like, yo, we were friends and you looked up to me as an
That was
intelligent
the alarm.
person.
Yeah. That's the alarming thing. Like we would just turn on anybody. If you wouldn't get on board with this narrative, it was like, oh, well, now you love Trump, or now you're far right, or now you're all these things. And it's just like, since when do we get to tell people who they are and what they identify? It's not about that for me. It's everyone is allowed to make whatever decisions they want. But it was just, if you won't do what we want here, you're in the bad club and you're kicked out. And I think for a lot of people, that was the defining factor of their decision to go along, was like, well, I don't want to lose anything here. I don't want to get looked at like a weirdo. I don't want to get kicked out of my friend group over this. And I just think there was such a rush to vilify anyone. I mean, from my own experience, and I make a choice here, and I was just lit up as a lunatic. And it was crazy to live through that and be like, people that know me know I'm pretty soft spoken, I'm pretty easygoing, even within my own job. Like I'm when you're a hired musician in a band, you're hired, yeah, for your performance ability and things, but you're also hired to follow order. Don't have an opinion and don't speak up. And so, you can do years and years and years and years of that. But the first time you say no and you're out, you're like, oh, okay, that's illuminating to what was actually going on here. Like, everybody's your family, everybody's your friend until you say no. And then you find out where you've really stood the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. What do you feel like moving forward? Do you feel that this decision has blacklisted you, or do you feel that it's actually opened some doors for you? Because I know you've started a new band and you're working with some other folks who also said no. Do you feel like it's given some opportunities, or that it will in the future because people know where you stand?
Yeah, I mean, everybody certainly knows where I stand now. So everyone that I'm working with now and who wants to work with me understands that. And so it doesn't have to be an issue. It's not something I have to tiptoe around. It's just, here's how I feel about this. And so, yeah, my new band, the Defiant, with Dickie Barrett from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, who went through a very similar situation as me, the band broke up over it, and he lost his job as the announcer on Jimmy Kimmel Live, where he had been since its inception for over 20 years or so. And, so he calls me up and is like, hey, I saw your story. And I was like, yeah, I saw yours. And he's like, let's start talking. Let's think about working together. I think that something interesting can come out of this. And, brought in a few more people and started writing this music that for me reinvigorated my love for why I played the drums in the first place. Like, it was such a blessing to get his phone call. And now a year later, we're just finishing up a record. Everyone's coming here to Tennessee this weekend to film a video and rehearse and, get ready to start rolling out a new band and a new project. And, so to be able to work on something with people that I feel good about and music that I feel good about, where I feel like I've actually been able to put a huge part of myself into the music instead of serving somebody else's vision as a hired person has really kind of lifted my heart. Even after my story broke, like there was a couple months where I didn't want to come down here to my studio where I'm sitting. I didn't want to play drums, and it was really hard to kind of claw my way back to that. And so to now have a record that I feel excited about, like, and makes me excited about music again. And I think there's an audience. I think there's a lot of people that are looking for something that's outside of the mainstream, because the mainstream has been so depressingly disappointing through all of this.
Yes, 100%. Depressingly disappointing that's that sums up my feelings exactly. I could not wait to get back to concerts and get back to that life. And I can't even. I live in Oregon and I won't go to a show here. I just can't. It's so weird watching a whole giant audience of people outside with masks on, screaming back the lyrics about not being a sheep to the band. I can't do it. I left. I walked out of a Nine Inch Nails concert last summer, and I mean, in tears. I was like, I can't fucking do this. I can't watch this. I can't. And I talked to one of the vendors there, and they were telling me some of Trent Reznor's requests for the show, and it was so weird. And I don't know where he stands, but I can only guess. And it was so odd and weird. And I was like, I don't even know. I mean, I had to let go of my deep love for so many bands. I had to let it go. It was heartbreaking. And I know you're in it. I shouldn't even, this is like third or first world problems here for me, but as a lifelong fan of some of these bands, it's been really, really, really depressingly disappointing. And
it's yeah, and not just in music. I mean, the Broadway scene in New York City has been just awful to their actors, to down to their audience. And then the funny thing for me, like I've got a lot of friends from that world, and some of them have left New York and come to Nashville, and some of them felt like they were run out of town. And when you're that awful and smug to your own audience of like, everyone has to be vaccinated, you have to wear masks through the whole show and this and that, and then no one's coming to your shows anymore, and now you're online going, this show is wonderful, look at this cast, and to a place where I've been told I'm a pariah, I'm not welcome, my family is not welcome, and you're treating people like garbage, and not just even doing that, but being smug about it. It's like, what kind of hubris do you have to talk to somebody like that? It's crazy. And then to go on the other hand, oh, okay, I guess all that's over. Infuriating.
And they were wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, they were just flat wrong about all of it. And that's the part that, as a physician who understands immunology, as it was, and you could have passed high school biology and understood what was going on. I'm not like tooting my horn, but I could clearly see what was wrong. And I was like, you guys are wrong. To have my own colleagues, my own physician colleagues come at me with such venom that I sat in class with and took board exams with. I was like, you guys, were we in the same? I was there with you when we learned this. I'm not pulling this one out of my butt. Like, this is actual stuff.
You were there on that day, right?
We were there. Yeah. To have basic sciences. I've been a scientist my whole life since I was a little kid. I was going to be a doctor, and I was a scientist. And to have science bastardized the way it's been and destroyed, and physicians, basic sciences, there's no respect left for them at all at this point. It's been devastated by the powers that be. Like, I think that part was heartbreaking. And then to watch my city virtually burn down to the ground. Portland's a disaster at this point. It all just, and then the music scene to crumble like that, and Hollywood to crumble like that. And it's just like, oh, it's, and I know we've all had so much heartbreak through it all. It's just been really such a disappointment but the cool part is that we find people like you, we connect, and these new relationships are built. And I think something amazing is going to come out of all of this, like your new band and the opportunities that are going to arise. Right. There's a lot of people that won't touch me. They won't have me on their podcast. They won't touch me anymore. I don't get invited to speak at medical conferences anymore. I have been blacklisted as well. And I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, I do think there will be some version of this that the payoff will be in the fact that we took our stand, we put our flag down, and we held the line.
And as the kind of getting to the point where you can't deny anymore, everything we were told was wrong. You know, I'm looking at it from the music industry, but I wanted to ask you, like, how insane was it you're a doctor, you're in medicine, and like you said, like you're pointing things out, and other doctors are like, you know, I'm just going to keep my head down, and I'm not wading into this. That had to be infuriating to know what you know and watch other people, and to know that they know better, than this, and they're still going along with it. Like, how was that? Like, I wouldn't know if I would be able to wrap my brain around it.
It was, I don't know. I mean, it was insane. And it was, the part that angers me the most is that human beings rely on physicians to tell them the truth. We are supposed to understand nuance. That's our job. And our job is to form hypotheses based on the best science that we have. And so for physicians to be telling me, trust the science, Tina. And I'm like, what frickin' science are you talking about? Like, where did this come from? Always got high marks in school without a lot of effort. I'm pretty nerdy when it comes to medicine. So I understand this stuff pretty well. And anyone who wanted to go, I was like, let's go. I'll freaking rumble with you any day on this. You're not going to win. I mean, I got stacks of literature, and I just couldn't believe that they wouldn't keep up with the data. That, I think, is the part that's really gotten me the most, is they just won't keep up with the data. And now they're just frankly denying the data. And I'm like, how is that ethical? Our first law of medicine is first do no harm. Like, this is not ethical to be ignorant, intentionally ignorant, or in denial of what's true. And when people's lives are on the line, that part frustrates me to no end. And so that part was particular. I mean, I was getting viciously attacked and slandered by my profession publicly, and that was pretty hard to take because I had been well respected prior to this. But you know, this is the part that gets me. There's this whole subsect of doctors who have been behind the scenes cheering me on and giving me props and telling me, you know, thank you so much for holding the line. Thank you so much for telling the truth. You're so brave. But they are letting me take all the arrows in the arena, and they're just sitting up in the bleachers, like quietly cheering me on, or not even cheering me on publicly, because they don't want anyone to see them be team Dr. Tina. That would be, the end of their career, they think. I was like, here, it's called informed consent. This is,
yes,
right. And that's the part that's been hard. In medicine, there's something called a PAR-Q, and we are required by law to give every patient a PAR-Q when we suggest a treatment. So whether I'm giving you a bottle of adrenal support, or I'm giving you a pharmaceutical, or I'm giving you an injection, or I'm giving you a vaccine, I am required by law to give you a PAR-Q. And a PAR-Q is an acronym. P stands for procedure, A stands for alternatives, R stands for risks, and Q stands for questions. And ideally, you would give the patient time to pause and formulate their questions. And so I usually would leave the room and say, hey, here's a pad of paper and a pen. And if you have any questions, think about it while I am getting your treatment plan together, and I'll come back and answer your questions. That's legally what's supposed to happen. But doctors couldn't even give a PAR-Q because there was the insert was blank, and all the data wasn't released by Pfizer. So they couldn't even tell them the risks. And if they could, they wouldn't, because they risk losing their license. This is the world we've been in. That's the part that makes me crazy.
Right. And while that's happening, we've got, people in charge on the news going, well, the science is settled here. Say everything is above board and we're fine. And now 2 years later, well, the science evolved. And it's like, well, which is it? I was told it was settled and we were all lunatics, and now it evolved and everything that we said was right. And now you're going, well, yeah, I was completely wrong, but I wasn't, because of whatever nonsense gaslighting they want to throw. And that's, I mean, as a third party, musician with no medical background, that's infuriating to watch. I can't imagine somebody like you that has a degree and has worked in the field watching this and just going, oh my God, like it's got to be embarrassing for the industry, I would think.
Yes, embarrassing. That I've used those words to people's faces. I'm like, I'm embarrassed for you. I thought you were smarter. Yeah,
Yeah.
because basic sciences don't evolve. We know certain things to be true. We know how, well, for instance, mRNA. Okay, so I didn't do well in genetics. That was the one class I did not do well in. And I did great in all my other courses, but genetics was the one thing that it took some effort. So, as you can imagine, as I just said, I didn't have to study a lot to go to school or to get through school well with high marks. And genetics, I really had to study. So, I remember a few things. And one of the first things I remember about mRNA is a pesky little enzyme called reverse transcriptase, which turns mRNA and pulls it back into the nucleus and embeds it into your DNA. And I kept asking everybody, well, these mRNA injections, what about reverse transcriptase? Like, we make it in our body. Oh, no, no, no. And nobody would talk to me about it. Everybody just kept blowing me off. They just wouldn't say anything. They just look at me blankly. Finally, a pharmacist friend of mine said something. He's like, yeah, right. I mean, I was thinking about that too. And then a medical student messaged me on Instagram and said, what about reverse transcriptase? And I'm like, no shit. Why is no one talking about this? Turns out, in a study that came out of Sweden, and I think it was 2022 at some point, they did, in a test tube, look at reverse transcriptase, and turns out it, in human hepatic cells, human liver cells, it definitely reverse transcribes back into the DNA. And so,
Wow.
it's like, but that got no fanfare. They tried to discredit the study. Of course, they tried to discredit any of us who spoke about it. So I'm just over here chirping on my little box, on my little Substack, in my podcast, trying to get the truth out. But I feel like at the end of the day, the truth is a sword, and I'm going to swing it as best I can.
I love that. Yeah. Yes.
It's just been wild. So anyway.
Wait.
Well, I'm excited about your band. Are you guys got any plans besides recording this video and this album coming out? Are you going to tour?
Yeah, we're trying to set up some tour dates later in the year. Right now, my goal is to just get some music out there. Like, we've been talking about the band for a few months. We have some t-shirts up for sale finally. Like, we're getting some things out there. But so we're going to be releasing the first song in June. And so I'm excited for that, to give people something to hear, because, we get messages from people that are like, oh, I like your message. I like what you guys stand for. But I'm like, cool, wait till you hear the music. Like, it's Dickie Barrett from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. It's Greg Camp from Smash Mouth that wrote all of those songs. Like, these are very catchy, punky, poppy. Like, it's a really good cross section of different styles blended together. And I'm super excited for people to hear it. I've been working in here every day, playing through the record, making sure I'm ready for rehearsal, and I just smile. So I'm like, oh man, I love this music, and I'm a part of it. I'm not, drummers, a lot of times we get brought in to replace a previous drummer, and you weren't there for all of these songs. And so you're always playing somebody else's parts and somebody else's material. And for me, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm finally back in a band where it's like a rebirth a bit for me, and more after everything that went on for me the last year and a half to 2 years. It's exciting. And I'm excited about music again for the first time. And there's so many bands out there that are holding the line and are doing it right. And for the other ones, it's just funny I'll see lineups for these punk rock festivals and these bands, and I'm like, you really going to play that song where you talk about this and that? Do you really believe that anymore? Like, you're going to do that with a straight face at this point? Okay. That's a choice. But, ultimately I just try to focus on what I'm doing, and be creative on my own and take care of my family. And, that seems to be how I can affect the world the most, is local. Like, what can I do with my family? What can I do to be present here with my friends and my community? And hope that if everyone can do that and focus on bringing their own communities together, that, it spreads, and we can find a way back to each other after the last 6 or 7 years of just constantly be told that we have to take a side on every issue, and there's only black and white, and you got to pick one. And you mentioned nuance earlier, and to me, that's the word of the decade, because I think there's so many people who are just incapable of it. Nothing's black and white. The vaccine issue is not black and white. Politics aren't black and white. And there needs to be more nuance in the world, where we can go, well, here's your issue and here's how you're allowed to feel about it. And if you don't, you're put in the bad box again. And, at some point, putting people in timeout doesn't pack a punch anymore. And I think more and more people would rather have community and rather come together and rather have a connection again, which I feel like we lost by locking everybody in their homes. You know, we started spending even more time on our phones and our computers, and we need to find a way back to being out in the world and connecting in person. And, you know, go give your friend a hug. And remember, they're your friend. You don't have to agree on every issue with them. I have so many people in my life, some of the closest people in my life, friends and family, don't feel the same way as I do on these issues. You know what? We're totally fine. We talk about something else. Like, they respect my position. I respect their position. I respect everybody's choice to do what they feel right for themselves and their family. And anything beyond that, I think, is just nonsense, where we've been stirred up to other people and be like, well, if you won't agree on everything with me, you're out. And I don't think that's a good way to live. The world can be a lonely enough place as it is. We don't need to make it harder.
Yeah. Amen. This is true. This is helpful for me to hear, because I get, after such a barrage of attacks, I tend to bite back. I get a little mouthy about it sometimes.
People will support you scenes, and wow, thank you for standing up. Sure, what I could. And it's like, I understand that. And it's not for everyone to stand up and say something. It's brutal. It is brutal. But if more of us did, this would have been over a lot sooner, and a lot less suffering would have taken place for people with their jobs and their families. And there's just been so much loss here. And I'm all in favor of rebuilding community and getting back to things. But again, it all comes back around to atonement. We can't move on without atonement, because then we're just going to do it again. And, I don't want to go through this again.
Good point. Yep, I agree. I love it. I appreciate what you're saying so much. And I it's good to hear, because again, I get myself riled up sometimes, because you get so used to boxing it out every day that you kind of get in that cycle, and it's not a healthy place to be always. So, well, I so appreciate you coming on here, Pete. This has been so much fun. I know our Zoom connection wasn't awesome, so I'm sorry for the glitches, but it's been such a fun time talking with you and connecting.
No, that's on my end. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm really excited for your band. I love everybody you just mentioned, and I think that it's going to be, I see like good summertime pop punk, communities being built around it. And I can't wait to see you guys live sometime.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care, and I'm going to stay in touch with you, and I wish you guys all the best. And I love what you're doing. So thank you for holding the line.